Welcome to Witness. I'm Ghida Fakhry. Over the past few years, Witness has been filming in and around the West Bank city of Nablus to build up a personal day-to-day picture of what life is like under the Israeli occupation there. Most recently, our team spent a few months following the lives of various businesses there to get to grips with how the economy is faring. Director Tom Evans and field producer Ghassan Khader witnessed the trials and tribulations of two manufacturing businesses and also two import-export agents. In a moment, I'll be talking to Tom about the film, but first, let's take a look at a clip from Nablus, the business of occupation.
Nablus city is the historic commercial capital of Palestine. It's a city struggling to do business under an Israeli military occupation. Many once thriving industries have been crippled. Israeli raids have almost destroyed the famous Nablus soap industry. Land confiscation threatens the surrounding olive farmland that supplies the Nablus olive oil industry. And tougher border controls make it increasingly difficult for any goods to make it in or out of Palestine. Over the next month, we follow a Nablus customs broker who has to deal with damaged and confiscated goods. A Nablus soap manufacturer rebuilding his company after the destruction of his family's factory.
This is thyme.
And an olive oil company fighting over land and trying to break into the international market.
Palestinian businessmen are the #1 expert worldwide in the crisis management. We always have a plan B.
This is the city of Nablus, dealing with the business of occupation.
I'm joined in the studio today by filmmaker Tom Evans to talk about his film Nablus, the business of occupation. Welcome, Tom.
Okay.
First, tell me why you chose to focus on businesses, these businesses specifically, and why Nablus?
Well, this is really the third in a series of films that we've done in Nablus. We did two films which focused on education in Nablus, two schools in Nablus, and Return to Nablus. And I think when we were filming those films, we really noticed how industrious a place Nablus is, how entrepreneurial that the people there were. But I remember having lots of stories told to me, very sad stories about businesses that were going out of business, these industries which were declining, and of course the answer to why they were declining was because of the Israeli military occupation of the West Bank, which is the answer to often what's sort of going wrong. So when we came back, we wanted to go back to Nablus to increase this picture of Nablus and to build a bit of a portrait of the city. So we thought, well, business would be a very good one to do.
What was the main criteria, though, that made you choose this soap factory and that specific oil company as well?
Well, the soap factory, as you said, the soap industry is huge in Nablus, or it certainly was huge. It's been going for sort of more than 800 years in Nablus. So we definitely wanted to concentrate on the soap factory, but since the second Intifada, there's only been, I think there's now only around 3 soap factories. There's not many to choose from. And a couple of them really aren't making much soap at all. But we were delighted. We found this character called Mushtaba Tubaili, who comes from, his surname in fact means soap cutter, and they've been making soap for over 400 years. They had a factory inside the old city, but that was destroyed by an Israeli airstrike. I think it was about sort of 7 years ago or something. But he decided to build a new family factory just on the outskirts of Nablus. So we went out, and it was very nice because it sort of had this metaphor of businesses having to evolve and change to try and survive under the occupation.
Israeli military incursions into the old city have partially or completely destroyed over 1,500 businesses since the second Intifada began in 2000. Before 2000, there were around 40 soap factories in Nablus, but only 2 survived the impact of the Israeli attacks.
هذا هون كان سيدي الله يرحمه، هو كان يشتغل في المصنع هذا. زي ما انت شايف كيف البدايه تقريبا مدمره، فدمر من الجهه الخلفيه. في 3-4 مصانع صابون دمر تدمير كامل، وكان صواريخ موجهه من طيارات. وكان فيها تجمع شباب ودمروا البنايه واسقطوها على اللي فيها واستشهد كم شاب فتره، ما اذكر قديش بالضبط لكن استشهد فيها شباب. الواحد يعني انتمائه للبلد هون يعني هو انتماء عظيم، بالتالي الواحد اي ضرر صاب بالبلد كله بيعز علينا.
Mujtaba decided to rebuild his family business in an industrial village just outside Nablus in the desperate hope of keeping it alive.
يلا ماهر. ابو النمر الطبخه نفشت.
Mujtaba still uses traditional soap-making methods, but he is now looking to expand his business and will be trying to develop the company internationally.
What was it for you, though, Tom, as a filmmaker, to make a film never really knowing what was going to happen next to your set of characters? We saw some very emotional scenes with some characters, quite understandably, I would think, showing frustration at the day-to-day workings and obstacles they faced as businessmen.
Well, I think as a sort of, when you make observational documentaries, it's always the risk. You sort of turn up not really knowing what the stories are going to be. And of course, however many you make, it's an incredibly nerve-wracking experience just to turn up not knowing who your characters are and what your stories are. We spent our first week there. It was me and Ghassan Khader, who was my local producer. He's a fantastic guy who basically just organises everything for us when we're there, gets us all the access. So Ghassan and I spent the first week out of a 5-week shoot interviewing all sorts of companies. We interviewed, I think, about 20 companies and spent about 1 or 2 hours with each of them to get a real sense of the issues that was going on for businesses in Nablus.
How important was it for you to have a local producer working with you on a story like this?
It is crucial to have someone like Ghassan. I mean, I don't speak Arabic, first of all, but it's much more than that. Nablus is a family-based society, and if you want anything done, you really need to know the right people. Someone like Ghassan knows everyone, or if Ghassan doesn't know them, they certainly know him and they know his name. So Ghassan, if you need any kind of access, if you need any kind of permission, Ghassan will really get it for you because he knows everyone, so he's crucial.
On the other side of Nablus is Ziad Anabtawi, the CEO of Al Art, an olive oil production company. Today, Ziad has been invited to a business networking lunch to welcome the new governor of Nablus.
This is the first time I'm going to meet the new governor. It's always important to make a good impression and to maintain good relationship with the surrounding people, especially an important character like the governor. That's the house of Mr. Masri on the top of the mountain over there.
The lunch is being held at the house of Munib al-Masri, one of Palestine's richest and most influential businessmen.
والحمد لله اليوم نجتمع من شان نرحب بأخي أبو صالح، أخي أبو صالح الشخص الإنسان والمناضل، وفين ما رحنا نسمع عن نضال أخي أبو صالح ورؤيته العظيمة وإدارته لشؤون البلد.
Business lunches are important networking opportunities, and everyone is keen to introduce themselves to the new governor.
خلي الاحتلال يحل عنا واحنا بنبني اقتصادنا واحنا جدعان وقد هذا الحكي.
احنا حاليا فكوا عنا واحنا بندير بالنا حاليا.
والله انت
ما بدناش ولا اي مساعده من احد.
احنا منتوجنا لزيت الزيتون منتوج عالمي يعني الان عم نصدر لبرا ويعني بنبيض الوجه. لما تيجي تزورنا تشرفنا الله يبارك فيك.
Ziad Anabtawi, very interesting character and very different to the kind of typical image one has of a Palestinian businessman. How ordinary was he in these extraordinary circumstances he faced?
Well, I think one of the things we try and do these films is to sort of, most people when they understand Palestine, they'll see it on the news, they'll see the very cliched picture of Palestinian teenage boys throwing stones and the Israeli army firing back. That's essentially what people see. So I think a big thing of what we're trying to do in these films is to show everyday life, that actually it's not so different from other countries. So Ziad Anabtawi we found was a fantastic character. because he represented the kind of person, the kind of Palestinian that I think people wouldn't really see very often. He's very Western looking, he speaks fluent English, very successful, very sort of suave. And
a typical CEO, would you say?
A typical CEO of a company, and you know, spends his life moving and shaking with these rich and influential people. So for us, he was a great character because he led us into this world of Nablus society, which was much the business at a very high level. So he's going off to dinner with the Prime Minister, he's meeting Monib al-Masri, one of the richest men in the world, who's from Nablus. So for us, he was a fantastic character for all those reasons.
For many businessmen in Nablus, it is crucial for them to be able to leave Palestine and enter Israel. But getting the necessary permission from the Israeli authorities is often very difficult. Nadal wants to be able to go to the Israeli ports directly to oversee his shipments and make sure cargo doesn't go missing. But he doesn't have the permit he needs.
For us, it's a magic card, believe me. Anyone who gets this magnetic card, he thinks he's going to paradise. And he thinks it's a one-way ticket to paradise. Yalla.
To apply for a permit, Nadal must have a magnetic ID card. And to apply for a magnetic card, he must take photos and the correct paperwork to an Israeli military compound. Like so many men here in Nablus, Nadal was imprisoned during the Second Intifada. There was no charge, but he was held for 7 months and blacklisted from getting an Israeli work permit.
I lost everything in those 7 months. Lost the business, lost everything, lost the clients. It took me 3 years after this 3 years to stand on my feet again. 3 years.
Filmically speaking, you just fall in love with Nadal instantly. He's this great character. He wears his heart on his sleeve. He's very outspoken, but he's very funny and engaging. So as a character, he was fantastic. But more important than all of those things, he's this import-export broker. So he represents about 50 Palestinian companies all over the West Bank. He's from Nablus, though. And because importing and exporting into the West Bank is so difficult, getting it through Israeli customs, you need someone like Nadal to do all of the paperwork to try and get it through. So that's what he spends his life wrestling with Israeli customs, trying to get these goods in and out.
I'll continue my conversation with Tom Evans about the film Nablus, the Business of Occupation after the break. Join me then. Welcome back. I'm talking to filmmaker Tom Evans about the film Nablus, the Business of Occupation.
Rush hour, all taxis, everywhere.
Nariman Naji works for Al Art as a customs broker. All goods entering or leaving Palestine, even across borders that aren't shared with Israel, must go through Israeli customs. This morning, Nariman has a meeting with Ziad Anabtawi, the CEO of the company. Ziad recently purchased 3 compressors that are needed to power the production line, but they've been held at Israeli customs for around 2 months, and the Israeli storage costs are mounting.
اسمع، عندك فكرة قد ايه لحد هلا كلفتنا ستوريج هاي القصة؟ فهمت عليك. يعني 1200 شيكل بالمينا و1000 نقل شيك والمخونة كنيم ولف حصاد لحد هلا. فهمت عليك. ماشي الحال. اوكي شكرا باي. That's 5,900 shekels until now.
That's already over $1,500 that Al Art has paid to Israeli customs, and there is still no sign of the goods being released.
Nariman, an interesting character too, another import-export agent, the only woman in the film. Why so few female characters in that film?
During the first week when we were interviewing all of the companies, we were very much looking for a female character, because of course we want one. Very sadly, I think, when we realised that with these Nablus businesses, all of the top of the business were run by men, essentially. We came across very few women. And it was just by luck we'd already chosen Ziad Anabtawi and the Alad olive oil. Then we met Nariman, who was actually quite high up. She was in charge of all the imports and exports. She could speak Hebrew, she could speak English, obviously Arabic, and I think all sorts of other languages. So for us, again, she represented a fantastic character because she was female. She did a very difficult job, but at the same time, as many women in Palestine do, they get stuck between having to look after the family and the household, the more traditional duties, yet at the same time trying to be a top professional, and she did that.
The faulty compressor has now completely stopped working, and production will have to be put on hold. Every day the Israelis withhold the new compressors could cost Al Art hundreds of dollars in lost earnings.
ماشي اوكي لورنس يلا. No news. Somebody is checking our file now and they are studying it again. If we don't have an answer, then we'll have an answer maybe tomorrow. So every day is tomorrow. And I don't know what to do, actually.
And how about the economy? How has that changed in Nablus? The IMF has been saying that in 2009 there was an 8.5% growth in the West Bank economy in general. How did that translate on the ground?
Well, it's difficult. I mean, first of all, that's an improvement on something which was very low indeed. I mean, during the Second Intifada, which started in 2000, the Nablus economy was almost decimated. But I think in a way, that's also the difficulty for the Nablusians, because the occupation's grip tightens and then it loosens. So you would think when I went there last time and the picture looked much rosier, that they would be much more optimistic. But of course, people who have lived in Nablus for a long time have seen it get better and get worse so many times. So I think in a way they would prefer it to just be sort of more normal rather than getting better and worse.
While Ziad enjoys his lunch, just 7 kilometers away, events are unfolding that could jeopardize his whole company. Villagers in Iraq Borim have been demonstrating against the restriction of access to their lands. The Israeli army has been called in, and violence has ensued. Some of the farmers in the confrontation supply Ziad's company with olives, and if they're not able to get to their land, it threatens the upcoming harvest and the production of olive oil. While young Palestinian villagers throw stones, the Israeli army fires tear gas and live ammunition. The violence escalates. Ghassan Khader, a 17-year-old, is shot in the head. Mohammed Khader, his 15-year-old brother, is shot in the chest. Both are rushed off to hospital. But their injuries are too severe, and both die before the night is out.
Did you find that there was a lot of criticism directed at the film for it being too one-sided, for just showing the Palestinian side of things?
Well, not that I've heard, but I think the main reason is that we're very honest about it being a film from a certain perspective. I think it's very easy when you don't live in Palestine or Israel and you're sort of out of it, that you do have a very different perspective. That when you're in Nablus, your perspective is very particular. To them, Israel just seems like this very all-powerful, all-controlling being almost, which controls every little aspect of their life. If they want to go travelling, they have to go and get a permit from an Israeli soldier at some Israeli military compound. You may wake up the next morning and half your farm has been confiscated because they want to build an Israeli settlement. There may be a curfew that happens at 9 o'clock, so you have to be indoors. It just feels like there's this sort of being which is controlling everything about their lives. There's nothing that they can do. That's a very particular perspective, and I think that's what we wanted to tap into.
This is the DCO camp. Inside there will be all my clothes. I have to take off all my clothes and searched and go through the X-ray barrier. And when I go inside, it takes me 15 minutes after search to get inside the room to talk to the soldiers. I don't think anyone feels good or feels happy when he goes there. Of course it's a nervous. It's a place where you meet the people who control your future, control your business, control your life. That's it. You are in your homeland, in your country, in your city, yet you have to come here to apply for some magnetic card or permits which affect your future. You wish me a good luck, huh? Yalla. See.
Was there anything that you wanted to film that you weren't able to?
There's a system called back-to-back, which is if you want to import or export anything into Nablus, or which is true of the whole of the West Bank, you, because of the separation wall and tough border controls by Israel, you need two trucks. You need a truck which has taken it from the port in Israel to get to the wall. Then you also need another truck which has come from Nablus to meet at the wall. In the case of Allied Olive Oil, they're actually pumping oil between the two trucks via this pipe system. This is something we absolutely wanted to get. So one morning we did start filming this. Ghassan and I went off and we jumped in the back of one of these trucks from Allied Olive Oil. We got very close to the Israeli military compound. Unfortunately, we thought we were doing the right thing. I got out, went to go and talk to the soldier and say, look, we're making a documentary. Explained to him, can we do the filming? He said no, unfortunately. But as these things happen, it's not just a no. He then called his supervisor. He called Ghassan and I into the compound where we were held for about 4 hours. They made us delete everything we'd filmed on the way up to the compound. And after about 4 hours, eventually they let us go. But they treated myself and Ghassan very differently. They were very polite and nice to me, whereas Ghassan, who's from Nablus, my local producer, they treated very differently. And when we were leaving, they gave him a bit of paper which said, you must report to an Israeli captain at an Israeli military compound just outside of Nablus. And it disrupted our filming somewhat, because then we would always have to go, and I would go with Ghassan for support to this compound. He would go in, they would make him wait for 5 or 6 hours every time, just at the end to say, oh, I'm sorry, you'll have to come back another day, which happened day after day after day, and we lost all sorts of days of filming waiting for Ghassan to see this captain.
Tom, it's been really great talking to you about this film. Thanks very much.
It's my pleasure.
And thank you for watching. You can see the full film, The Business of Occupation, on the next Witness special. I do hope you'll join me then. Thanks so much, Tom.
Thank you.